Hi, everyone. My name is Jung-Hoon Lee, professor at Yonsei University and chairman of South Korea's Ministry of Unification's Committee for the Promotion of North Korean Human Rights. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the 10th anniversary of the UN's Commission of Inquiry report on the DPRK's human rights violations. I feel very strongly about what transpired 10 years ago, because I happened to be South Korea's ambassador for human rights at the time the inquiry was taking place. I feel very proud to have had the opportunity to provide the venue for the 2-week-long hearing and interviews right below my office at Yonsei University. The COI report came about because the UN finally recognized that North Korea was one of the worst abusers of human rights. The 371-page report concluded that the country's atrocities did not have any parallel in the contemporary world. The report determined that this totalitarian state's systematic, widespread cruelties against its own people are tantamount to crimes against humanity, on par with genocide, ethnic cleansing, and war crimes. Over 200 witnesses and experts chronicled forced labor, forced abortions, infanticides, public executions, a massive gulag system, and overseas abductions, among other barbarities. North Korea, in short, was found to be violating practically every single one of the 30 articles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The COI report was a huge milestone because for decades, the regime had escaped attention and punishment. Up to this point, the international prosecutory mechanism failed because too often accountability took a back seat to peninsular security and inter-Korean relations. The Commission's verdict and the General Assembly's subsequent endorsement of its conclusions and recommendations changed everything. Hopes were raised when the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights opened the field office in Seoul in June 2015. The office was to monitor and document North Korea's repression and deprivation. It would play a role reminiscent of the Central Registry of State Judicial Administrations in Salzgitter, where West Germany documented East German human rights violations. Similarly, with the passage of the North Korean Human Rights Bill in South Korea in March 2016, Seoul was expected to give a strong push for all the recommendations as suggested in the COI report. But looking back the past 10 years, I'm afraid the international community has failed to implement the most sensible accountability measures the COI report laid out to combat North Korean atrocities. That's why we must now focus on accountability. The UN, in particular, the Security Council, the General Assembly, OHCHR, UNHCR, and other relevant agencies should seriously consider incorporating the rights up front policy by persuading many of the more than 100 UN member states that have diplomatic relations with North Korea. The UN Security Council should continue to be urged to refer the situation in North Korea to the ICC so as to deliver a clear message on how serious the UN regards the severity of its human rights violations. If this does not work, the OHCHR should establish a committee or a task force to study and report on the justification of an ICC referral as a reminder to the Security Council of the R2P obligations of the UN member states. But perhaps more fundamentally, the UN should remind North Korea that its continued failure to fulfill its duty as a UN member state exposes it to the possibility of its credentials being reconsidered, as happened to South Africa, by the UN General Assembly. This possible outcome was suggested by the SAGES Group in its most recent meeting held in Seoul in November 2023. Documenting and casually raising awareness is simply not enough. The time is now for accountability as recommended in the COI report. 10 years ago, on the question of North Korea's human atrocities, the COI report ended the debate and showed us exactly what needed to be done to correct the situation. We have to ask ourselves, if the global community cannot stand against atrocities unparalleled in the contemporary world, then what is the raison d'etre for UN and the international human rights regime? North Korea is an ultimate litmus test for whether the 20th century's hard-won victories for human dignity continue to matter in this 21st century. As we should be reminded that the COI report already provided 10 years ago the blueprint to do just that. Thank you very much.